conflicting issues by drawing inspirations from traditional buildings. Further to that, it exploits the level of local technology and the materials available locally. He is strongly committed towards conservation and is active in many areas related to public awareness. Besides architectural and design services, his principal engages in other related professional and social activities, teaching lectures, presenting papers on the use of timber architecture at conferences and forums. I now hand over the mic to Mr. Lynch. Welcome to KRVIA.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys. This was not planned. When I came to India, I was asked by some friends whether I'd like to come and have a chat with the students in the school. So here I am. I hope you guys will enjoy what I have to share with you. And hopefully your idea about what being an architect gets to be a bit more focused. Architecture is not an easy profession. You have all come here to learn about architecture, to be professionals. That's why the topic of my talk there is education. Make sure it works. Yeah, I say education. Okay? Now, you're all going to be trained to be architects, to be great designers. You're all told to design things with great philosophies, with great concepts, with all sorts of ideas. But do you know, when you get out there into the real world, it is not all hunky-dory. It's not all cushy-cushy. It's not all about philosophy and concepts. It's hard-nosed, making money. Architecture is really, really not a profession. It's big-time business. And the sooner you guys get to know and understand that, the better it is. So when you talk to your client, you don't tell them about my concept, my philosophy for your project. You know what the client would do? He'll say, look at you and say, hello, Mr. Architect. You are spending my money. And why is it all your concept? Why is it all your philosophy? Now this, they don't teach you in school, do they? No. Right? Every time you make a presentation for jewelry, they all want to hear your philosophy. Correct? Hello? Yes. Oh, good. You guys got tongues. We are speaking. Good. Now that has to be that way. And architects have to be forthright. Say what you have to say. Otherwise, don't say it. Quit the profession. Like what I said, go and sell putu mayam. You'll probably make more money selling putu mayam. Right? Now, architecture, but then architecture is a noble profession. I have been in this profession now for 50 years. I know what I'm talking about. Okay? So, let's get going. Now, contemporaneity. Why? You see, as architects, we tend to get into our hole, into a hole of your own, and you don't understand what's going on around you. You don't know what's happening in the world, you don't read the newspapers, and all you guys now, all you young generations, you are just focused on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. That's what you're doing all the time. You're sending messages there and all that. You go out for dinner with friends, all of you are looking at your phone. Hey, that's not what it is all about. What to re-evaluate. We've got to look at the equitable use of the inheritance, of the global inheritance. Evolution of the imbalance of wealth since the Industrial Revolution, 1850. You all know what I'm talking about? You all ever heard of the Industrial Revolution of 1850? Yes. Hello? Yes. No? Yes. Did you study about that in school? Yes. You did, good. Then, see, 80% of the global resources are being consumed by 20% of the developed world. And India is not part of the developed world. So you are among the 80% who are consuming 20% of global resources. Now think about that. Then we got to carbon emission now, we got carbon footprint, carbon credit, all these things, they are being thrown at us every day. Are we able to handle it? Do we know what it's all about? Or are we constantly aping the West, thinking that what is from the West is the best, and what is right, or what is white is right? Huh? This sounds good, right? This West and best, what is right? Okay? Now, education is supposed to gear you to the acquisition of knowledge, to contribute towards the improvement of society, the environment, and education is a tool for improvement, setting milestones for learning, identifying scholastic attainment, basis for communication and learning is a natural process. We all learn, we are all curious. And it's the curiosity that drives us. But this is where the danger comes. Architects forget curiosity. The process of learning starts by you realizing that your brain is like a sponge. What does the sponge do? The sponge just absorbs everything that it is dropped into. If you drop sponge into water, you get water coming out. You drop your sponge into a coffee, you squeeze your sponge, you get coffee. If you drop your sponge into a pot of shit, what do you get? You get shit coming out. And that's what you got to watch yourself, that your brain don't absorb shit from everywhere. Okay? Is that understood? Yeah. Thank you. So, we proceed. Now, we talk about global warming, we talk about sustainability, we talk about environmental protection, we talk about floral protection, we talk about fauna protection, we talk about... Finally, the last thing we ask yourself, do we talk about protecting the human being? Oh, human beings. Oh, are we supposed to protect the human beings? Are we supposed to think of the quality of life for the human beings? That's a big question. So what's happening to the earth? I can see. You see, you cannot mistreat. You cannot mistreat the nature. You cannot mistreat the environment. Have you all noticed that recently we are getting a lot of earthquakes and tsunamis, volcanic explosions and all that? Now, these are symptomatic of something that's not right in the world. I wonder, how many of you have never heard of the Fukushima tsunami in Japan? How many of you have not? So I take it all of you know about the Fukushima tsunami? Hello? Or all of you don't know? What is it? It's either you do or you don't. Come on, you've got to make a decision. You're an architect. Now that is the problem with the profession. Architects cannot make up their mind. And at the end you get eaten alive by the clients. The clients have you for breakfast, the client eat you for lunch, and your clients eat you for dinner, and then they'll have you for supper. What is left of you? How many of you have not heard of the Fukushima tsunami? Please put up your hands. So, okay, so you have not heard, but the rest have. Okay? Now, in the tsunami, what was the biggest item environmentally that was destroyed? Please, those of you who have, please tell me what is it. What was destroyed? Hello? Come on, those of you who didn't put up your hand. Yes, sir. The nuclear reactor. Now, that whole thing melts through. Do you know what happens when nuclear reactor melts through? The whole environment gets, what do you call, polluted. It gets nuclear waste everywhere. The whole place has become radioactive. And you all studied physics, correct? You all know during nuclear physics that the lifespan of nuclear waste and its effect is infinity. But you see, it's now only, I think, about 6 or 7 years since it happened in Japan. Do you hear of the Japanese telling you about the real radioactive levels of their products? Do they tell you about the radioactive of their sashimi, of their sushi, of the imported Japanese goods? You don't. There's a global conspiracy so that you are consuming radioactive food without even realizing it. So if ever any of you are thinking of going to Japan, my advice is please buy yourself a Geiger counter. Do you know what's a Geiger counter? Yeah, it's good. Something is got, it's radioactive, it's good. Yeah, then you are safe. Okay, that's what you want to do. Now you see, this is a picture of Aceh in Indonesia. Top picture is what it was. The lower picture is after the tsunami in 2002 or something that hit Aceh. And you see the whole devastation to the urban environment. Now, nature fights back. Since the Industrial Revolution, you see the graph of carbon emission, carbon dioxide emission has gone up. And we don't know when it's going to stop. And of course, the Western country tells India and China, you must not have carbon emission. Now, you guys are just new. You're the new kid in the block, and you want to catch up. But they say, oh no, you mustn't catch up. You cannot. You must curtail. You cannot do that. You see, so this is the unfairness, and this is something which all of us have to break through. We have to desist, and not consume everything that they tell you. Now you look at this pie. See how big a chunk India is compared to the rest of the world. So what does it mean? It means India can play a very big part, a role model, if you guys take up the challenge. Are you prepared to take up the challenge? You are going to be architects. Are you going to be good architects, or are you going to be architects? Huh? Who's all the time selling your posterior? Now you don't want that, do you? Now you look at this picture, a picture of a developed country, a family up north, family of 4. Picture at the bottom, family of about 12. See the amount of food they eat in a week. So where is the subtle difference between these two pictures? Can any of you tell me?
The amount of processed food.
Sorry? Packaging, right. You see the amount of packaging. The picture on the top left is. And the picture on the bottom right is nothing. It's the way you people will buy your things from the market. But when you go to the supermarket, you get it right up there. So the question is, should supermarket be allowed to thrive in India? Now that's a big moral question. Professionals like you have to ask to protect the environment. Do you know how much energy goes into the packaging? Before you can even produce your packaging, how much energy goes into producing the machinery? Right? How much carbon dioxide is emitted? Now, think about it. I'm only showing you the way. I cannot give you the solution. I've gone past the use by date. Okay? You guys are still approaching the date. All right. Now, you see, for concept of knowledge acquisition, I have developed this little graph. This graph. At the bottom is time, your age. On the vertical is your acquisition of knowledge. So you see what I've set up is, you get your secondary education here, you get your first undergraduate degree. Now, I'm using the old system, not the current system. That means if you're doing architecture, you do 5 years, and at the level of 5 years, you've got the equivalent of Part 2, RIBA, and that entitles you to sit for your professional practice exam, and if you pass your professional practice exam, then you can call yourself an architect. That's Part 3. So that's the level. But in today's educational system of architecture, you can get the diploma here, you get a B Arch Science, and then you get some funny degree, and it's only after you've done about 7 years you get this whole thing, because the whole process of architectural education has become money-making right at the place where you start your learning. Then, this is the master's degree, then you got your doctorate, the PhD. So, it's very important that when someone who's come up here, he's attained this level, that he do not allow himself to plateau off and start sliding down. Because when that happens, mediocrity sets in. So the whole same thing goes up there, up there, up there. Now, a lot of governments around Asia and a lot of universities says that to qualify to teach, you must have a PhD. And employment in the government is you must have PhD so that you are a scholar. The more degree you get, the more scholarly you become. Bullshit. Nothing to do with that. Because when you study, you are a nerd. You are studying everything from the book. You pass exams based on what they are looking for, but you are not thinking. And that becomes a problem. So, when you get a PhD, it's not Doctor of Philosophy. PhD is permanent head damage. So when you're up there, you have suffered permanent head damage. So from a state of permanent head damage, you go into more damage because you start to slide into mediocrity. Because if you are good, at that point, you will move this X and Y, X is 0 point. Up to that, you start that as your 0 so that you can go further up. Now that's improvement, and that's something which you people must learn to do. Okay? Now, today architecture is no longer about originality or creativity. I say this in front of you students, in front of your lecturers, and I want someone to challenge me. Today, very few people use their hands and their pencils to sketch. Everything is computer driven, correct? Do you people sketch or you use computer? Both. But ultimately, it's a computer, right? Ultimately, yes. So there you are. Now, the Chinese calls the computer in Chinese, right? So a lot of them, architects, are so, what they call, dependent on the computer that they stop thinking themselves. So I often ask them, what happens when the electricity is removed? Oh, it doesn't work. All right? So I said, but then, do you have something here? Yes, we've got a, now. I said, can this one function without electricity? Yeah, it can function without electricity. So I said, why don't you use what you have instead of relying on the electricity? Okay? So, now, architecture has become something that's too much reliant on the computer, and that's not good. You go into the computer, you Google, you look for images, and you like the image, you take it, and you say, we'll use this. Now, that's not correct. So, architects must take advantage of a disadvantage. When you are in a disadvantaged situation, you are forced to think out of the box. Now, there's a saying, necessity is the mother of invention in English. But then I've added another one to say a disadvantage obstruction is the fairy godmother of creativity. Alright? Now, why? I've used the story of Cinderella. How many of you have heard of Cinderella? Alright. Now what happened to Cinderella? She could not go to the ball, so she was crying in the kitchen. Then her fairy godmother came along, made her beautiful, changed the pumpkin into a carriage, the white mouse became the horseman, and the brown mouse was the butler, and she went to the ball, and she ended up marrying the prince. So that's what architecture is about, taking advantage of a disadvantage. And more importantly, very often when you ask architecture students, what does an architect do? You ask yourself that question. Very few of you can actually answer. You can't answer it positively. But here I said to you, architecture is about people. That's it. It's all about people. Whatever you design, whatever you plan, urban planning, architecture, building, and so forth, is all about people. People are about life. What is life about? Life is about living. And what's living about? Living is about enjoying, feeling good, looking good, enjoying all the things that you have given by nature and historically built by mankind. So, finally, what does it mean? Architecture is really, in the end, providing enjoyment for people. So if you remember that point, it's about people, providing facilities, means for people to enjoy, for people to look at what you've created to say, wow, you have succeeded. We enjoy spaces. We start spaces from inside. But I noticed when I met many architects during my visit this time in India, in Delhi and Mumbai and Pune, and I talked to them. They say, oh, I'm an architect. So I said, so are you practicing on your own or with a group? And you know, and they feel kind of embarrassed. You say, oh, we are doing interiors. Oh, I said, well, why are you doing interiors? What sort of interiors? And they sort of go around, and I detected a sense that they are not proud of the fact that they were trained as architects, but they are now doing interiors. Now, let me tell you one thing. A lot of you are going to be in that same situation. You need to do a lot of interiors, and then you get caught in doing interiors. Now, I am one person who believes that good architecture starts from the interior. You must design an ideal interior space. In every building that you design, you've got to design the ideal hall arrangement, you've got to design the ideal classrooms, you've got to design the ideal hospital, bed arrangement, the rooms that you are going to build in the house, the living room, the dining room, etc. It's only after you're able to design all these internal spaces with the sort of a space that you're going to create, not just flat roof and four walls, that you're able to put all these spaces together to say that this is the culmination of your attempt at solving problems within each given space. Then that is your architecture. Because architecture starts from the inside. It's not the outside. Why do I say it's not the outside? Now, how many of your friends who are architects can tell you that their client rushes home every evening, take their favorite armchair across the street to the other side of the pavement, he sits down there with his glass of whiskey or beer, and he looks at his house and said, wow, what a lovely house. Oh, I love the windows. I love my roof form. I love all these things. Do they ever do that? No. But why are architects spending so much time looking at the elevations, looking at the external forms, looking from the sky, from the aerial view, do SketchUps, you do everything? Huh? Hello? Please, can I get some response? Hey, doesn't make us sound a little bit weird? Nutty, perhaps? When all this effort we put in, nobody appreciates it. Then somebody comes along, plonk another building right next to your favorite elevation. That happens every day. So this is what I'm trying to say. You've got to think. We have to re-evaluate our system. You know, we say mother is the mother of all arts and a combination of the total design process. Yes, it is. But architecture is a manifestation of the interior. And so that the outside becomes a celebration of the inside. You get, interesting things like, oh, you got everything. You got light, you got shadows, you got all sorts of form. But what the heck? Doesn't mean anything if it doesn't work. Creation of spaces is connectivity, the space, the light, shadow elements of surprise, of delight, the unexpected. All this makes your architecture interesting, but it all has to start from the inside. Should not be a shoebox. Should not be just four walls, flat ceiling. Most architects think within the four walls and flat ceiling, which is like a shoebox. You put shoe boxes together, you cut a holes to them, you get another room. Then you stack shoe boxes up, then you got a high-rise building. So internships should be in shoe shops. Architecture should go to intern in Bata. Arrange all the shoe boxes and see what's a high-rise you can get. You should not go to an architect's office. An interesting space, but what is it? It's all sort of shade, vertical, slope, light and shade. Oh. But architecture is not about external views. I said, how many of your clients rush outside? They don't. So, interior, exterior, we need to push the boundaries of the IIC. Push yourself out of the box. IIC is what I call the invisible intellectual ceiling. Every one of us has that invisible intellectual ceiling that stops us from going forward. Now we all think architecture, architects, great. What do architects design? Everyone talks about design. That's very difficult. What is more difficult to define is what are the things that related to architecture that architects don't do. Here I have a whole list of 16 items. Architects now don't do interior design. Architects don't do quantity survey, you don't do planning, you don't do the structures, you don't do air conditioning, you don't do landscaping, color coordination, blah, 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 the whole list goes on. So what does the architect do? The thing is, architects used to do all those 16 items. Architects used to do all this. But many years ago, because we were linked to the RIBA, those British architects decided that, oh, we are the arty-farty. We don't do numbers. Let's leave the numbers to the engineers. Oh, we don't want to do surveying, go out into the fields, in the mud, we'll leave it to the surveyor. We don't want to measure the quantity of our building, leave it to the quantity. So they gave everything away. In the end, what does the architect do? That's it. That's the danger. Architect ends up doing something that's very nebulous. And this is not good. Now, we have to take all these things back. That means you must all be competent to understand all these things. Because when a client gets you to design a project, you must be able to tell the client all about this. Right? But it's not. The client must get a quantity surveyor to do his costing. He's got to do a structural engineer to do his structural calculations. He's got to get an M&E to do all this and all sorts of stuff. So this has to change. Originality is out now. Plagiarism is trendy and in. Because you go Googling for images, correct? Do your students go to your Google? You do very often, right? Yeah, I mean, a lot of you are laughing, I know. So, we mustn't allow computer to put us in the box. And design students must begin to think and be innovative. With plagiarism, you see the picture on the left is the Malaysian Parliament House. So somebody wants to build something like that. It's a cartoon, of course, it's not true, but that's what you are. Yeah. Meritocracy is defined as high abilities, and that's no doubt, it's merit. So you're merit or you're no merit. So here I come back to this chart. You say a person, after he has finished his school certificate, he can move up to achieve a certain standard, and at that point, before he starts to plateau off, he moves his X and Y axis up here. And from here, he can keep on going up, and he doesn't need education because he is thinking and he's thinking out of the box and it moves yourself. So as designers, whenever you design something which you think you've attained a certain level, you must say, hey, I must now push my design boundaries further and further and further, all the way up. And that's what meritocracy is all about. And do not allow each of these levels to become your invisible intellectual ceiling. Now this is I know a lot of people won't agree with me, but never mind, that's the point. So when ideas get stagnant, they become museum exhibits like this. Mediocrity is anything that is of low value, opposite to meritocracy. So, you don't maintain your level of meritocracy, this is when you start to slide down. You slide down and so forth. Now you don't want to do that. As long as you tell yourself you're vigilant, that you maintain your standard, then that's what you have. So, get out of the box. Now, you see, we start off, every one of us graduate with great values. We all want to be great designers. Everyone has thought, you must be the next Le Corbusier of India, right? Because every design submission you do, you must give the best, your idea of philosophy, this and that and all that. But once you go out, You may have all graduated with high marks, but when you go out, you are completely lost. You have given up your high ideals, you are too happy to please the client. The client pays you a fee and you agree to it, right? What's wrong? I don't know about India. Does the profession have a minimum scale of fees? Do you all know that? Huh? There is a minimum scale, yeah? Because we have that in Malaysia, we have it in Singapore, Australia, they have it. But you know something? You know what minimum scale of fee is? That means you cannot charge anything lower than that. But you know something strange? Without fail, most architects drop their fees. They undercut. They really do. And it's a pity. I cannot understand that. Do you know the oldest profession in this world, in every country, they all have their own standards. They will never lower their standards. Right? Once agreed. So, but architects would. So therefore, I very often tell my friends, architects, I say we are worse off than prostitutes because we are prostituting ourselves by lowering our fees. Now that's terrible. Architects must have self-respect. Architects must have dignity. And architects must have integrity. You must stand there, if the client gives you something and you think it's not right, you must be able to say to the client, no, I don't think, but of course you do it politely, you know what I'm saying? You don't go have a fight because all these guys, they all have money. When they have money, they think they're God, but they're not. So, I have walked away from many projects. When the clients get difficult, I tell them, sir, I think I'm not good enough for your project. Get yourself another architect. And walk away. And you know something? When you walk away from a situation like that, you feel damn good, You really feel good. You feel tall. You have not been bought. You have not sold yourself. And that's very important. I think the morality of being an architect, a good architect, is that money is not everything. You ask yourself, for me to survive, for me to have a meal, how much money do I need? Do I need to have $1 million salary every month? When you have more money, you've got more headaches. You'll be worrying about how much interest you're getting from the bank. This bank is giving more interest of that, so don't do that. Now, clients can be very difficult, and they get you to do all the wrong things. You come up with wrong designs and things like that. Then here, you're not sure whether the client wanted an elephant or wanted a tiger, or was it a typhoon? So this is but no, it's a good picture. So do you tell the client no and lose a project? I think you have to. If you think the project is not of your interest, you just tell the client. You see, all clients, they like to have their site flat. They chop all the hills, they chop the trees, they chop the hills, they level everything. So, I just tell them, I said, when God created the earth was round, He created hills, valleys, rivers, seas, trees, birds in the sky, fishes in the sea, and all that. But He never made a cube as earth, because if He's made cube as an earth, it'd be fantastic for developers. They can just keep on building right to the end. They do a turn around to the other side and they continue building again. Right? So there you are. Now, how sustainable are things like this? So you've got there a picture of a high-rise stack of buildings. Now, is that environmental friendly? Although the vegetation around the ground seems to suggest some consideration, but when you're living up there, is the quality of life good? Then the picture down at the bottom, you got bowling alley. The client wants you to improve the look of his bowling alley, personalized. So you put some planter boxes at the side, and then you put some curtains at the end. Is that how you placate your client, make your client happy? Or if your client wants to smell the roses that's growing down below and he's on the 5th floor, you do what this guy on the left-hand side is doing, right? Now these are the sort of things a lot of people do. And on the right, he wants to play golf, and every time he hits, you've got about 10 people with the net and say, oh, what a good shot. How else can it be? Now, these are the sort of nonsense a lot of people go into. And at the end of the day, you end up with the wrong end of what it is all about. And you think this is the front of the elephant. Now, how is mediocrity manifested in real life? So here I show you the graph just to remind you, because I think this graph is a very telling graph about mediocrity. Now, what are the signs of mediocrity? First, you lack initiative, you lack vision, you lack conviction, you lack foresight, you lack idealism, creativity, professionalism, you lack moral fiber, and you lack design integrity. Now, I'm sorry, these are very strong words, but I need to share this with you, so that you can maintain yourself. Then you've got misplaced values. You accept without challenging. You don't breach the I see. You are intellectual lazy. You accept whatever is given to you. You don't want to think and challenge, to be out of the box. You lack leadership quality. You accept the norm, whether it's right or wrong. You subscribe to commercialism, and you get in and relish in commercialism. Then the pop art culture, and of course finally is plagiarism. Because you've got nothing left, so you just plagiarize. Now, having given you this whole spiel, now I just want to walk you through quickly a few pictorial essays. Now, one of the things that I did at a very young stage of my career is I started a small R&D center on my own. See, this picture here shows you an old timber door from an old house that is being reused in a contemporary situation. And there I've got brickwork that are set up as load-bearing wall structures. Now, in Malaysia, we don't use load-bearing walls as much as you do in India. So therefore, it is important for me to experiment with that so that I can use this as an example to show the client, to show the contractors how it is done. So these are things that you have to do yourself, and these are things that I did myself. Then this is another picture of a complex combination of brick column that is load-bearing wall, and then I've got this. Sorry, did someone say something? No. And I've got these two beams, that's timber beams going across, spanning from column to column. I've got this whole series of interlocking frames to provide a rigid joint. And over here, this member is extended over there so that I can create a walkway. And this becomes part of the roof framing. So, you know, when you do things like that, you know it works. Then you are confident to do it in your own projects. Because the client always asks you, where has this been done before? So if you can tell the client, yes, it's done here, and you bring the client, have a look at it, you explain the thing, and they say, oh, well, okay, I'll give it a try. Then you won the day. So these are other examples of trying to see how we can connect. These are all old recycled wood, how to create a tropical environment using natural material together with nature. And I think this is very important. And so here, you sort of try out with the juxtapositioning of elements here, elements that goes up here to a structure, then you have another structure at the back there, which is load-bearing wall, and with a different section. And I think architecture is to create nice, interesting spaces, and both inside as well as the outside. Now, this is another example where, because timber has become very expensive as a material, that you can't afford to use large chunk of timber. So in the old days, the stringer would be made out of solid wood of say 3" by 8". But now I just use 3" by 2" and have it double clamped, and then I have these threads spanning across the whole thing. So you got to experiment with things that in order to go to explore your architectural boundaries, to know where you can go. Because without doing all this, you are unable to do it. Because whatever you learn in school is only what you learn in school and what is in the textbook. More importantly, you've got to use your non-electric brain to move forward, okay? And that's what it is. And you see over there, I've got slats on that, because in the tropics, what we need is a lot of air movement, cross ventilation. The heat in the tropics is not like yours here. Your air is dry, our air is wet. And so in creating things, you create a lot of penetration. You get light coming through, you get shadow lines, you get textures and all. And so that makes the architecture interesting. So when someone look at your creation, the eye just don't stop there. The eye starts to move from component to component, up and down and across. So a flat ceiling does not work. Now, here we're experimenting with flats, canvas flats that can be operable. So when you donate it, it comes out, it covers the space. When you want to have it open, you just pull it up with a string. You can see the little string there, and so forth. When you show this to your clients, some clients will say, "Oh, golly, this is very, disadvantaged because I've got to be pulling it off and all that." Well, I tell them, I say, "Hey, why are you worried? You've got maids. You can get your maids to open all these flaps and close them when it's going to rain." Yeah, I said, "Yeah, that's true, that's true." I said, "Well, you know something, a lot of you, when you have made a lot of money, what do? The first thing you do is you go out, you go and buy yourself a yacht." I see a lot of people in Mumbai now are owning yachts. You go in front of the Taj in Mumbai, the gates of India. There are lots of yachts there. What do? They go out, they pull their sails. I say, start practicing your sail pulling in your house. And this is an external view of my R&D center. It's set among all these trees. Still there. So any of you interested to come and visit, please let me know. And this is a view of the internal space. It goes up 4 levels. Everything here is in timber, different sizes of timber, and the structural walls are load-bearing, going up 4 levels. And when you're using bricks, you've got to know how to tie your bricks together, and that's very important. And this is where, as an architect, you must know about structures, you must know about construction. You just cannot allow everything to be done by your engineers, because your engineers are the most non-creative people around. And you don't give them a blank check to say, "Hey, design my structure." You've got to tell the engineers how to design your structures, not engineers telling you. Similarly, you don't allow the quantity surveyor to write the spec for your building. You tell the quantity surveyors what you want in your building. You understand? And that's how you go. Now, I've got this space. It's a great space for people. And you can see how the different layering, the open space, I get lots of light coming in. All these different textures, the floors are delineated so that you get light coming through and allowing air to go through. and all this, and there's light on the top. So, you know, the whole totality of this space is experimentation. You're experimenting with the structures, you're experimenting with the materials, you're experimenting with how to build this stair so that it's so light and so transparent. And yeah, and of course these mannequins, you wonder why they're there. Well, we had quite a few of this left over from a boutique. You know, the boutique closed down, lost money. So they were just standing, sitting there out in the garden, getting all very depressed. One day I said, hey, you know, if Michelangelo can, in all his buildings in the St. Peter's Square, and on top of every column, he's put a sculpture of somebody. So I thought, well, why not? At every corner when I turn, I put one of these mannequins. And it's proven to be quite effective, because the front door is just at the bottom. It's just at the bottom here. So when anyone coming into this space, they walk in the front door, they look at the interior, they look at the wall, they look, oh wow. And so when they turn around, suddenly their head go jerk the head, then you know they've seen these mannequins. And oh, yeah, it's nice. I mean, that's what makes the space interesting, and you always remember that, that experience. So here you are, that's it. See, when you come in, whoa, what are all these two women are doing out there? If Baroque architecture can have all these naked, voluptuous women, you know, in modern situation, let's use what we have. And there you can see how the whole architecture is experimented using big members, small members, and so forth. So I think if architects can start to really break through the box and reach the IIC, then this wooden bird will be able to fly. Until then, now every journey starts with a discovery for me, and it's an excitement, a new sunrise. So the Salinger's house, which won the Aga Khan award for me in 1998, is this building. One of the main jury who selected this design was Zaha Hadid, right? And she told me so. And so this is a plan. The building is a triangular Malay house plan. This is the core, the living room, dining room, guest room. This is the upper bedroom. So, you know, it's one triangle for the main house and the other triangle for the deck, and a little gazebo at the end. So there's a section across the main house this way. You see the deck, you see the core coming up, master bedroom, you know, the space. There's nothing flat, no flat roofs, nothing. It's all volume, voluptuous volume, created by the structure of your architecture. Your architecture must show your structure. So never just draw two horizontal lines and say, RC beam to engineer's detail, or two vertical lines and say, RC column to engineer's detail. You must design your structures yourself, okay? So you can see this is a view looking from the front at the building. Because of its shape, it creates a lot of interesting pattern. Well, I thought I'd show this picture to you so that you know that it's real, it's not fake. Huh? You don't think there's so much fake news around. So there you have, that's me when I was much younger. This is a king of Spain. This was a carpenter who built the house. That's the Aga Khan, king of Spain. And here's a picture of my clients, Mr. Salinger, Mrs. Salinger, the carpenter, and me. Now, this carpenter is a very interesting guy. He's an old Malay craftsman. He is a craftsman. You know, he don't have a right hand. You notice he's got a right hand missing? Yeah? That's why I had to be there, so that as the, what do you call, diploma is given to him, you know, he takes it with his left hand, and then I have to take it away from him. Now, he's got no right hand and he's blind in his left eye. Because in his young days, he used to do dynamite fishing. So I think that one occasion, they lit the dynamite, the fuse was too short, or the fuse was too fast, and it blew up in his hand, so he hurt himself. But since then, he's become a very, very good carpenter. And God bless him, you know. He did this place for us. Now, this is the sort of things he had to do. And he only had his left hand, and he was able to create, this is one of the connections of the timber column. You can see this is one beam coming in, this is the direction of one beam, this is the direction of another beam. And for him to do that, it was fantastic. And when he was first shown the plans by the guy who introduced him, the guy said, hey, but Adam, this is not a typical Malay house, which is rectangular. He looked at this guy and said, no, if the person who drew this is able to draw this, I can make it. I can build it. Now, I think that's a fantastic attitude. Now, that is the sort of attitude, the spirit that every one of you must adopt. Right? You never say no. I will give it a try. I will make it. That has to be the fighting spirit. Right? Can you all do that? No. You didn't do it. No. Now, the whole design was based on triangles. So everywhere you see we have triangular patterns and what have you, and everything is all radiated out on a very regular structural modular basis. So because everything is exposed and you see everything that's there, nothing in this building is used as decoration. It is all part and parcel of the structure. And I think this is something that everyone must try to do. That your architecture must manifest what the structure is and how it is built. Right? So just a couple of different views of the house. And from whichever angle the house is looked at, it is always very pleasant. Now, what is interesting here is you notice the land is sloping, but the house is lifted on stilts. Now, when you lift a building up on stilt, you actually, you elevate the thing up, you create a lot of visual transparency so that the connectivity between you and the back is maintained. Now, you see, in this instance, I'm talking about the ideals of architecture, you know, maintaining visual connectivity and things like that. Now, you got to do it, and you do it in this manner. So standing from front, I can see the back there, and standing here, look at that. So from if you walk around the whole house, you're able to see the other side of the property. Now, this is the sort of thing which today is lacking. You get somebody who wants to build a hotel by the sea. He plunks the building there, it blocks the view of everybody behind. Now, it would be sensitive if the building were lifted above the ground, so whoever are behind the project, the hotel, can still see through and look at the sea beyond. Now, that is the sort of things we must maintain for us to have connectivity with our environment. See, at one end of the house, this is about 20 feet. But when you go to the back, this is only 7 feet. It shows that the land has fallen about 13 feet. But there was no need to excavate the land. there was no need to flatten the land, there was no need to bring in the bulldozers, earth excavators, and so forth. Now, you know, I do not like to touch the earth because it is natural, you have water falling across it and so forth. So it is part of nature. It's in a perfect balance. And I just don't do that. Now, why? Do you know earth-moving equipment, bulldozers and things like that are what I call lethal weapons? Do you know what lethal weapons are? Firearms, all these things that kill people, it's classified as lethal weapons. And they are registered. People, you have to be trained to use them. So, lethal weapon for earth-moving equipment is destruction of the environment. So anything that destroys the environment has to be carefully guided. This is a close-up detail of the junction. Now, you see, all these joints were connected without nails, as I showed just now, you know, that detail. And all these members were all laid in a very triangulated manner. So this is carrying the design to its object. So here you get a view of the gazebo, one point of the triangle. This is the one point of the other triangle that's inside the living room, and the different function. But then the integrity of the detailing is all there. Nothing has been put in as an interior design input, but it's all part of architecture, because architecture started from inside and went to the outside. Here's a glimpse of the dining area, the kitchen over there, and here's a view of the gazebo with the slatted seats. Now, these seats, we always have railings and balustrade to stop people from falling over. Now, what we did is, instead of having this as a vertical element here and a railing around, we thought we'd push this vertical element out on an angle, and then when it's out, we create a seat here, and therefore this railing has now become not only a protective barrier, but it's become a seat for people to go sit around. So if you have a party or what have you, it becomes a nice environment for people to sit. And what more, we provide a little ledge at the back so that you can put your glass of drinks, whatever it is, so that it becomes a very salubrious, functional space. And here's a view of it, and the repetition of the element of the vertical thing, yeah, makes it a very elegant space. And this is what the building is, set in the old rubber estate. Here, again, is the meritocratic chart. I want to remind you again that you please do that, because I do that myself. Now, in my years of architecture, I highlighted certain things. I established for myself some core values in the way I do my architecture. Then I formulated that for every one of us, we must have sense of responsibility, diligence, and urgency. Because unless you understand responsibility, diligence, and urgency, you will never be able to take on any task that you have given to you. Diligence, urgency are something which students find very difficult to beat. And we have to instill into you that keeping time, keeping schedule is part of diligence. And when you're in the scout movement, you're taught to be prepared. So this being prepared is something you must maintain throughout your life as a professional person. Architecture for me starts as architecture of humility, to be followed by the Tai Chi of architecture. And over the years, working in the tropics, we have developed the rights of the tropics. We have 12 mantra that define what the topic is about so that we have an understanding of it. And I think the other thing, very important thing is conservation of building materials, history, and so forth. Because we mustn't forget, today was yesterday's tomorrow, as today will be tomorrow's yesterday. So to go forward, you have to always come back. Yes, I mean, these are certain values which you must have in order to maintain a certain integrity in your architecture. Of course, a lot of architects are very flippant. They say they will come up at any time. So there you are. The passive energy architecture is what everybody's talking about. And at this present moment, we are talking about architecture without walls. This is our preoccupation. So we move on. So these are the stages of how we maintain our standard of work. From 1960s onwards, every stage of the career, we have to understand where we are going. At every point you do a check in order to move in the correct direction. And I translated those years into this chart. So at every stage, here the years, and these are the different projects that we've done over the period of time until now, 2018. And it's something that you have to maintain for yourself. You don't do it, nobody can do it for you. So now I'll quickly run through some of the images. I think all you need to do is look at the images. This is one of the first project that we did back in 1974 when I returned to Malaysia. You know, you go overseas to study as part of globalization. The second stage of globalization is you come back, you apply what you've learned. You don't regurgitate. That's very important. When you apply, that means you're thinking. You're thinking of what you've learned into motion. So this is first project we did, and you can see even back in 1974, we were already looking at ceilings. We're not looking at flat ceiling. It's always volumes. And I think architecture has a lot to do with volumes. You look at some of your old fine Indian historic buildings, they're all volumes, hardly any flat spaces. Of course, there will be some flat spaces. Right? Then, in Malaysia in those days, everyone was building terrace houses, double story, on the ground. So, when I had a chance to look into one of these projects, I said, hey, why shouldn't I lift these 2 stories above the ground to create an open space at the bottom, right? So that the building becomes a bit taller and it allows air to flow through. And also being in the tropics, we get a lot of rain. When it rains, the children can use the space underneath, and you can hang your clothes. And when it's too hot, you can use the underneath as a cooling space. So these are the sort of things that you're going to think yourself. Nobody's going to tell you. You're going to think of how you provide for the people who you're designing for. Then this is one of the first small projects we did, and it's on a hill. The hill comes up like that. So what do? Do you cut the hill? You don't cut the hill. You just build little legs that's sticking up there, and you sit your hill on your house on this knoll. And that's what it looks like. So from the other side, when you look up, you see just a little glimpse of your building sitting in repose in the landscape. Now, this is a very important landmark building because this building, we start to look at cross-ventilation, open spaces, architecture without walls, and corners, having corners taken away so that the space do not get this clustered feeling. Here, we don't have a square walls. We have spaces that goes up, as this section shows you. Then it goes on. Then this is another project we did, which is quite remarkable in the sense that what we did is we pulled the building apart, so that part of the house is on this side and part of the house is family area and so forth. This is a cross-section showing the swimming pool, water cascading down, and this is a living room flowing out to the garden. And this is the polymer space. All these roofs cantilevered over are open, and there are no windows there. Here's a detail of the space. So from here we evolve. Now see this detail of the house is an evolution from. Let's see here. These are the drawings. This is the stuff. This is a drawing here, how it is, and all these were part and parcel of what we learned from this detail, right? So from something like this that you've done research on, you move on to create more ideas. Here are all different sort of details and this sort of things. To get huge cantilevers without any support. Now that is something which we always like to do. So we don't have to put columns. And many years ago, I had an Australian engineer who came out to visit, and I discussed with him the possibility of creating this sort of roof. He told me, he said, look, Jim, the best thing is you just put a beam there, stick some columns underneath and stick it up. I told him, his name was Tim. I said, Tim, any morons can do that. I said, we're going to go beyond the stage of being morons. Right? So I said, I thought you'd give me some suggestion. He said, nah, I said, can't do it. So anyway, when I finished building this, he came along, and I showed it to him, and all he could say was, oh, it's true, Jim, you made it. I said, yeah, thank you, Tim. So, there you are. So we see, these are all the sort of things. Now, you see, swimming pool in the middle, this is the utility area, and this is a section across here. Very simple. It belonged to two Swiss gentlemen who were watchmakers living in Malaysia, and they wanted an open space so that they can swim and go straight to bed, or the moment they get up in the morning, they're going to go straight in and have a swim. And that's what it looks like, the interior. And again, we use a lot of timber. Oh, this is the Salinger's house. This is 1994. So, but it also spelled a period in our development, in my development in architecture and so forth. Then we move on to 1999. This is another house on a very steep slope. From here to the bottom is 100 feet drop. From the front to the back is 200 feet in length. So you've got a slope that's 1 to 2. And everything there was very open, no walls. This is the dining room wall, and this is the upstairs and the front lobby. This is what the house, the plan is here. You come in here, you got a lobby, you go down, the dining room is below there, and the living room is on this side, and this is what you see. All these slabs are on this wall. It is a step wall because of the boundary. So, and here we have, these are circular windows that I call the feng shui window, where part of it is glazed, this quadrant is glazed, this quadrant is open. So when it rains, you tilt the window so that the glazed part is stopping the rain from coming in, whilst the other two parts still allow the air to flow through. So this revolves, every one will revolve in the center. And that's why I call it feng shui. Feng in Chinese is wind, shui is water. So it's a wind and water. And these are just, again, the structure is exposed and it creates decorative patterns. And this is the wall, the external wall of the dining room. The different template of the ceiling and the template on the floor are connected by this vertical slats. And because of the differential connection, it starts to modulate as it moves along. In fact, I think your principal's office has the window on the top, which applies the same principle. If you have a look at it, see, this is how the whole glazing on top of his office is along this system. And this is what the house looks like from the bottom. This is the dining room wall. This is the rival hall space. And this is the living room. These are all the feng shui windows there. They are all circular. So this is one of our later project. That was 10 years ago. It's a little cafe on the slope. And this whole thing was in steel and timber. And that's what it looks like. This is the plan. It's a very simple building, completely open, non-air conditioned, and also no windows. So it's all natural. So a lot of people have asked me, say, how is it that you're using steel? Because you are supposed to be timber. I said, well, steel and timber are interchangeable material, and so using steel here, to me, was a very compatible example. Now, this is this is the latest house that we're doing. It's almost completed. Now, this one is totally in RC and steel. Again, I've been asked, why are you using RC and steel and not timber? Well, my simple explanation is that I think at some stage in one's career, one must take on the challenge of doing something that you have never been agreeable to, and to prove that at the end of the day, you can still create the architecture that you've been talking about. And in this case, it's totally architecture without walls. And you can see that the transparency of the spaces here is opening into the dining room space opening up to the roof, and this is a view to the upper part of the dining study. This is where his studio is, because the client is an artist and he wants a space there. This is the plan of the house. So you can see it's a triangular basis, triangular plan, where we have the dining room, living room. This is a guest room. This is a kitchen, and the back of house is a stair upstairs. And we have the triangular void here and the circular study upstairs. This, this one shouldn't be here. Everything is on the right triangular basis. Again, the whole concept of triangulation. And this is, here we are trying the idea of using canvas for external walls, and then timber slats wall. So from the inside, you look at the whole space. All these panels can be open, and they are very light, and they give a nice shade. So, and what happened is they are all based on the experimentation before of using ropes to pull it up. And from there, you see, you will be able to create a lot of interesting imageries. So when the sun shines on it, you get a pattern here, you get this sort of thing. At another time of the day, you get a different expression. So this, to me, is how we need to be looking at architecture. Architecture should be as simple as possible and not difficult to maintain. And here, again, different examples of the mood changes in the space. And that's what we are going towards with regards to architecture without walls. Now, this is a small project we did with another architect in Ahmedabad. It's a little farmhouse. And here, again, the concept of no walls, right? And open space. The only wall where is around the master bedroom, and the rest of the place open. So here's a view of the kitchen, the looking out the surrounding. By lifting the building up above the ground, it gives you a much better view of the horizon. Otherwise, when you're on the ground, you don't see very much. And this is something which a lot of architects kind of resist themselves from doing. And because of that, we're able to create a swimming pool here. The swimming pool is created without having to excavate the ground. The pool is built on the ground and it's lifted up, and it fits in with the living room, the master bedroom, and so forth. So from the master bedroom, you can see the pool, and that's the whole thing. And there's a depression in the site, and we use it to retain grey water. So here are just some thoughts, energy that we got to start to produce. And before long, when energy gets to be too expensive and scarce, we are going to have countries going to war. This is my prediction. And a lot of people will be fighting to come to live around the tropical belts. And that, I think, will happen. I don't know when, but it's a prediction. And of course, finally, I just want to show you a concept that we are thinking of. Making houses where all we do is we use landscaping elements to mitigate the sun penetration so that it doesn't get too hot. And so this green are the green patches, and also to allow cross ventilation. So when the breeze goes through plants, it drops its temperature, so it makes the internal of the house much cooler. So here is what it would look like. Completely no windows. We have privacy screens at the bottom and at the top. So conceptually, it's something that's doable, but the question is when we are able to get it done. So this is a 3D of it, and I think that's it. So with that, thank you very much. Is there any question? Anyone like to ask any questions?
Thank you for that inspiring presentation and the great insight. Thank you for the presentations. Are there any questions? Anyone? Yeah.
What are your suggestions for our timber in future, uses of timber in future?